Let's move on to August Wilson Derleth. Derleth becomes a respectable figure in American letters in his own right. He has a lifelong involvement with the horror genre and an enormous impact on its course and development. Derleth plays the key role in establishing the posthumous reputation of his mentor, H.P. Lovecraft. He devotes 30 years, Derleth devotes over 30 years of his life to tireless effort to ensure that Lovecraft's work receives popular and cultural recognition. He also writes a number of short stories and novels based on the Lovecraftian cosmic view. These stories maintain readers' interest in Lovecraft's work during the 1940s to 1960s. Now, these two friends and Lovecraftian disciples approach various publishers with the plan for a book publication of Lovecraft's work, but they're always turned down. So they established their own company. This is in 1939. Arkham House. This publishing company, Arkham House, is created for the express purpose of bringing Lovecraft's work back into print. This is based in Sioux City, Wisconsin. Arkham House publishes two large collections of Lovecraft's work in hardcover: The Outsider and Other Stories in 1939, and Beyond the Wall of Sleep in 1943. Arkham, the name of Arkham, comes from the fictitious Massachusetts city, loosely modeled on Salem, that served as a setting for some of Lovecraft's stories. Now, Wandre departs for military service around 1942, and he never goes back to Arkham. So Derleth runs the show until his death in 1971. Lovecraft's writing till the establishment of Arkham is confined to pulp magazines. Now, the first book, The Outsider, 1939, is in fact the cornerstone of modern fantasy collections. There's a limited edition, 1,268 copies. It's a massive book, 553 pages. The book takes 4 years to sell out. It cost $3.50 in 1939, but it now fetches many thousands of dollars for a copy. Now, I actually have a copy of this hardcover edition. I didn't pay much for it. I found it in the early 70s in a junk shop in Brighton Beach, and I paid all of $2 for it. And I've kept it wrapped in plastic ever since. Now, the central concern of Arkham Publishing is veneration, respect for the works of H.P. Lovecraft. Arkham considers H.P. Lovecraft's work as sacred texts. Arkham soon is able to diversify. They publish early stories, sketches, poetry, essays, letters over a period of years. Lovecraftania. You have Marginalia in 1944. You have Something About Cats and Other Pieces in 1949. You have The Shuttered Room in 1959. You have The Dark Brotherhood in 1966. There's a collection of poetry and 5 volumes of selected letters that are published in the early 1960s. There's also biographical material on Lovecraft. Some notes on H.P. Lovecraft, 1959. You have The Dunwich Horror and At the Mountains of Madness, which are finally published in book form in 1963 and 1964. These are, in fact, the definitive text. They're checked against the original manuscripts by Lovecraftian scholars. Arkham sets a standard for production values in quality, in art design and format, and influences all subsequent specialty presses that are devoted into fantastic literature. Arkham features state-of-the-art graphics and great literary quality. Now, Derleth has an eye on the Lovecraftian market, and he brings out his own posthumous collaborations with H.P. Lovecraft. For example, The Lurker at the Threshold, 1945, The Survivor and Other Stories, 1951. These stories incorporate unrelated fragments from Lovecraft's notes, and Derleth creates his own stories out of these. Essentially, fragments and pastiches become collaborations between Lovecraft and Derleth. Derleth may have in fact created the actual Cthulhu mythos that is commonly credited to Lovecraft. Derleth gives it a revisionist interpretation. Derleth forms all the cumulative references that are scattered among Lovecraft's writings into a genealogical pantheon. Grotesque deities correspond to the elements. The evil gods are known as the Old Ones. The good gods are the Elders. Derleth, throughout the 1930s and 1940s, writes a series of mythos pieces that are inclined towards an understated style. For example, the Sheridan Mirror, 1932. Traditional ghost story methods are utilized. There's a heavy influence from M.R. James and Mary Wilkins Freeman. But his weird fiction develops and matures in both style and technique during the 1950s and 1960s. And Derleth manifests simple, unadorned prose using atmospheric regional settings and perspective handling of character nuances. Derleth, his best work in the horror genre is Mr. George and Other Odd Persons. This is from 1963. Derleth never seems to find his own voice as distinctive as Lovecraft. He's not a visionary, but Derleth has genuine enthusiasm and prestigious knowledge of supernatural literature. And he's a great editor and publisher. He makes many contributions. He establishes the importance of the Weird Tales school of writers and preserves their fiction for future readers, writers, and scholars. Arkham House in the 1960s issues the first books for the immediate successors of the Lovecraftian tradition, and also showcases British weird fiction to American audiences. Arkham House supports younger writers, a series of talented newcomers. You have Ramsey Campbell, Brian Lumley, Gary Myers, David Case, Charles L. Grant. These authors are all Lovecraftians who start their writing careers at Arkham House. Arkham House is a good first market for newer writers, especially those who started under Lovecraft's influence. Derleth not only rescues Lovecraft, but resurrects a host of Weird Tales writers and alumni, and gives new writers a place to get their start. He resurrects the work of Clark Ashton Smith, Henry S. Whitehead, Robert E. Howard, to mention just a few. Names that might have been forgotten in the decaying, yellowing pages of the pulp magazines. Derleth gets these stories into hardcover book format. Now, the support of newcomers and the resurgence of the old masters was in fact Derleth's great significant contribution to the horror genre. Now there's two final Derleth Lovecraftian anthologies, The Tales of the Cthulhu Mythos, 1969, and New Tales of the Cthulhu Mythos, 1971, which are mega hits in paperback. Derleth cuts a deal with Ballantine Books, and a series of well-selling Lovecraft paperback editions are issued. Lovecraft has never been out of print ever since. Now, during the 1970s,